What can we start with? What's like the biggest thing on your mind that we can help you with?
So I mean, it's hard to pick like one biggest thing. There's so
Doesn't
much,
matter. Let's start with one.
Okay, I'm just literally going to go in the order that I wrote things
Yeah,
down.
sure.
And this is kind of like interesting because it just came up in the gym 2 days ago. And I just want to say too, I've listened to so many of your podcasts and I love all your material and I love all your stuff, but I definitely haven't listened to them all. So I'm sure I'm going to ask you
Barely
something.
listened to all of them.
I'm sure I'm going to ask you something that you're like, okay, I already covered that,
You're
in
totally
time, but
fine. I realize how valuable your time is. So I'm amazed people even listen to the podcast at all. So don't feel bad.
oh yeah. Oh my God. Yes. All the time. Okay. So first and foremost, I would love to know your take on the whole like rice theory. There is so much back and forth on that right now. And we just had like our top girl at the gym get injured on Saturday. And there was this whole like, do we ice it? Do we not ice it? Do we let it go? Like, and she, what she's like trying to get to college and do all these things. So it was like,
Yeah,
what
sure.
do we do?
Yeah, I'll tell you I'll summarize what the research says, and then I'll give you like my human level, answer. So
Okay.
definitely, I probably say I've reduced the use of ice by about 80% in the last 5 years, and there's a good reason for it too, because the thought is that originally we used to think that ice is what was helping promote healing. So by putting ice on it, it was somehow allowing like better blood to come in, and like it was getting out some of the junky stuff that maybe was not so healthy to stick around, the damaged tissue. And we kind of had that for a while. But what we've actually found, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it, is if you put ice on something, it gets colder and it actually constricts the blood vessels. And so proper healing is actually not a bad thing. It needs inflammation. That's where people go wrong, is you actually need a little bit of inflammation to kind of get things going and turn over some new cells. And so with that in mind, if we make it a traffic jam, that's a problem, right? And so that's kind of the issue, is that there's too much traffic on the highway. There's nothing moving, no cars down, no cars out. And that's why we kind of got concerned. And so what they found with studies is that when you ice somebody, it actually does restrict some of the healing potential. And what's probably more beneficial is some sort of compression and elevation, because the tissue that gets damaged, it's kind of getting like pumped back to the heart when you're moving. So when you move, your blood vessels get squeezed by muscles, and it sends back that stuff that's not so great to have like in your foot or whatever it is. And so that's kind of the thought process now, is that the movement is more what's getting the healthier thing we want, and that the elevation is helping not cause too much swelling. Too much swelling is what causes pain, because it's like pressing on the nerves and it feels bad. So that's what we've learned in the last 5 to 10 years, is that it's more about trying to get traffic flow and less about a traffic jam. And so we actually promote more of some light compression, elevate your foot up, try to move as best as you can, but also within reason, right? If somebody has a broken foot, it doesn't really make
Yeah.
sense. And so I would say, yeah, I generally don't use as much anymore, there are very clear indications when people need ice, right? And this is like a pendulum swinging too far, is like, we can't be monsters, right? And so I think the worst example I've seen of it is a girl, I'm not going to say about where it happened, but she essentially fractured her heel. She hit her heel so hard on the concrete next to the floor that she was like screaming in pain. And somebody was like, no, don't use ice. Like, we don't want to impede the healing. I'm like, this chick is going into shock right now. Like, this 9-year-old girl is
Oh God.
screaming in pain, and she needs a pain blunter. She doesn't need healing right now. She's in the middle
Right.
of this competition. She's very stressed out. So that's an example of when I've heard some people say, like, I'm never using ice ever again. How dare you use ice? I'm like, I'm sorry. If this 11-year-old breaks her foot and she's screaming bloody murder, I'm going to use ice. So
Right.
that's the time in the gym when I think it comes up the most, is like that first 5 to 10 minutes. It's probably more important we keep them healthy and safe in the mental aspect than more the physical aspect. So yeah, when somebody rolls their ankle real hard or somebody falls real hard, we ice them initially because we're trying to calm them down. And so that's really that. There's a bigger problem with somebody possibly going into shock than that is. Now, somebody stubs their toe and rolls their ankle or like bumps their arm and they're not in a ton of pain, they don't need ice. We just need to kind of let them chill for a minute. So that's one. The other time, which is not as relevant to this conversation, is when somebody has surgery or has a very acute injury in the clinic. If you can't sleep, or if you can't even tolerate moving at all because it's so painful, there are times when we'll use a little bit of ice, like before they go to bed, along with some medicine, because that's when your body heals. So yeah, that one doesn't matter as much. But yeah, generally, it's probably more the educate the person on how to not put force pressure on it. Wrap that area with some like an ace bandage or whatever else it is from a doctor's advice. Elevate that. Try to move around the best you can. Like if your knee hurts, move your ankle as much as you can with your foot elevated because that helps out. Weirdly enough, putting your, like, if you hurt your wrist, like putting your arm up on the couch at night when you're like eating dinner and trying to get some blood to kind of come out of that. That's what we can promote more. So does that help, or is that confusing? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess I just would like to follow up by saying, like, why do you think so many, I mean, you're saying this research has been out for like 5 to 10 years. Like, I've heard you kind of say this before. Some of my own personal medical providers have said the same exact thing, you know, that like ice is too constricting and it doesn't allow for healing. And so why do you think that so many medical providers are still, I mean, we're still having girls sent home from like the ER or from like a pediatric, like walk-in place or whatever, saying like, use the rice method, like always.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of layers to it. One is that change is hard and slow. Two is that on the medical side, we don't do a good job of translating the geeky stuff into normal day-to-day actions. And so it's think about if you have a conversation with somebody about gymnastic skills and you're like, yeah, your chanko, and like pull on blind here, 1/2, and they're like, you know what I mean? It's like they get completely lost.
Right.
So our job of explaining what's practical, like this conversation with like when you should still use ice. But then also too, I think that generally speaking, it's really hard sometimes to get the balance of the conversation we're happening here. You hear like a 2-minute soundbite or a headline clipping on social media that ice is the devil and never do it again. And people just kind of get caught up in the buzzwords. They don't really read research. That's the problem, is people don't take time to really understand the literature and say when or when it's not. But yeah, there are some people that maybe don't stay up to the research and they don't really know. But also too, it's really hard to change something you've done for so long. But above all else, I think the biggest problem is that people are good at calling out the bad things, but no one is good at giving them a replacement for what to do instead. So, you know, think about an ER visit or a doctor, like someone's in a ton of pain and they're like, okay, well, just go home, don't use ice, but figure it out. You know, like there's no
hang out.
That's the bigger problem, is we need to give, it always comes down to some form of education. And we believe in this firmly at our gym. Everywhere we go is like, if you're going to criticize a policy or criticize a practice, you have to be willing and able to do the research to figure out what do we do instead, what productively to fix this. And that's where the problem comes up, is everyone's just like, no more ice ever, it's bad, right? But they don't give you a possible solution. So parents are like, my kid's in a lot of pain at home, like, what am I going to do? So yeah, I think most of it comes down to alternative solutions are out there. We just don't do a good enough job of educating people on what to do instead.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. Great lead off. Perfect.
It honestly just happened. So that was kind of like the top of,
no. It's very
right in my brain. And it's always, you know, like, I don't know what other providers your girls work with or anything, but we're always trying to get the parents to go see, you know, physical therapist, and then maybe like an acupuncturist or like something, you know, that's a little different. And people are always like, that's crazy. You know, we need to like go to the hospital and see our orthopedic, and then like, you know, what's done is done. And they don't realize that you can do more, you know, but they're not quite ready to like accept that.
Yeah, we are unfairly positioned to help people. I'm a physical therapist. Eva has her master's in mental health, and then our other head coach, Jess, is a athletic trainer as well. So we're like unbelievably unfair, right? But the girls that I coach, most of them, the younger levels especially, we send to a friend of ours, Andy at Soul PT around here, who's great, and he does most of it. I try my best to separate church and state. I don't treat anybody in the gym, and then I have people come to my clinic if I'm going to do that. But it's all about it's about finding people with common values, people that value the same thing, that are willing to be open-minded and talk and come to the gym, and you can go visit treatment and stuff. It takes a while to find some people that are good valued and have a good skill set. You know what I mean? It's find someone who has both of those things. And so we've had a lot of people that we've worked with for other things, you know, sports psychology, nutrition, that were like good intentions. And then we got them like we need to try something else. And so we've gone through quite a bit of, it takes a while to find a good team.
Yeah. Okay. So on that note, just, you know, knowing your guys' expertise and everything, I'll dive into something a little more heavy.
Yeah.
That was like an easy one. That was like a clinical question. Like
we're just warming the arm up. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like obviously I've listened to a bunch of your stuff and I know where you stand. And one of the reasons why me and a couple other of our coaches so respect you is like your desire to change the culture in gymnastics. And, you know, listening to a lot of your podcasts did so much for me as far as coaching, because, you know, I was always kind of like, strong arming these girls and being like, you got to do this and you got to do that. And then like one time you said, you know, hey, the girls might be there for social reasons and like, you got to give that up. And I was like, you know, oh yeah. I was like, I should probably just like let that go. So that did like so much for me, and it was really helpful. And like our classes just became so much less stressful and, you know, whatever. However, you know, all that being said, and, you know, like I said, I've heard you speak on it so many times. In your experience, have you ever had a time where you kind of do need to tell a kid, like, I know this sounds so extreme and I don't want to come off as like mean or, you know, anything, but like tell them to quit or tell them that like it's not for them, you know, like we have kids who, now we're a really small gym, so tiny. We only compete for a league called Joga, if you know what that is in New Jersey.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, we're not like USAG going to the Olympics or anything like that. But you've got like one girl who wants to like go to college, you know, and you've got everyone in the middle who's like, we kind of like it. We are here for fun. You know, we get some good skills. We don't.
Yeah.
And then you have girls who are like, you know, they've got a mental block on every event. Their stomach hurts every single practice. They want to go home. They are crying every other time. Or if they're not crying, they're like joking around and like barely doing their conditioning. And like, you know, it's just like never a good time for them. And you talk to them and you talk to the parents and you say, hey, you know, like, what are we doing? What are, you know, what do you do in that scenario after it's been like every single avenue and you could just truly tell that, like, I mean, I'm sure they want to be there. You know, I'm sure part of them is like not sure what their life would look like without this big commitment that they've had for so long. But how do you let them down easily?
Yeah. First of all, I'm so happy you asked it because that is the ultimate elephant in the room. Like I get 100 emails and DMs about that exact question. So the fact that you asked it means we all deal with it. You know what I mean? Like everyone has the exact same thing and everyone's struggling with it, but a lot of people are probably going to get a lot of help because you asked it. So thank you. And it's also crazy how much we're alike. Like we are literally the same in terms of like, we have this spectrum and Eva's going to, you know, knock this out of the park as we use our metaphor. We have some kids that are totally just there for fun, recreation. They do 4 other sports. They sometimes come, they enjoy the social aspect, and like it's awesome. But then we have some kids that are like, no, I want to go to college. I legitimately want to try to get a partial scholarship. And we're like, whoa, that is a wide margin to try to serve everyone in the community. So my 2 cents on it first, and honestly, a lot of this is what I've learned from Eva. So I want her to kind of definitely take this one more. But for me, there were 2 layers to it. One was getting over myself. And I'm not saying that you're in this bucket or your coaches are in this bucket, but there was one layer, which was like getting over my ego and the fact that I had to really swallow a hard pill, which was that I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was doing it because I wanted to look impressive in front of other coaches. I wanted to have kids on level 10. I wanted to have kids going to college. I was insecure about my own coaching philosophies in my own kind of like personal life. Honestly, like my personal life was bleeding into the gym. And so because I had some other issues in my personal life with my insecurities and some big fears about people like accepting me, and like I had a big fear of rejection when I was a younger coach and like social judgment, I was like rushing that on the kids about like, we need these skills. We need you to compete. We need a level 10 team, whatever it is. And that was a big, if I didn't fix that first, and Eva was a huge person who helped me with that because she's one of my best friends, I would have never had the leg to stand on to change the things in the gym and have the harder conversations there, right? Like I would be my first year, I remember I was trying to be the coach that everybody loved and I was the nice guy and I never wanted to rock the boat. And we had a couple younger gymnasts at the time who were very hard to deal with because they were in this exact situation. And this super awkward moment would come up when they didn't want to do their skills and didn't want to condition. And I would just be like, I don't want to talk to you. And I would just like clam up and like kind of like turn the other way. Right. But looking away is still a choice. And I realized for myself, I was like, this is my problem. I have to be willing to learn communication skills and have these harder conversations. But then the second layer to it is I've learned a lot about how you have to be empathetic and you have to always put the ball in their court. You have to be like, what do you want? What's the ideal version of you and the ideal version of your future that you want out of gymnastics, right? And sometimes that literally is, I want to be here 3 days a week to talk with my friend about this cute boy that I met, and I want to joke around on the side and kind of be fit. I never want to eat. I don't want to do it. And we're like, all right, cool. At least we're on the same page. You know what I mean? The problem is that sometimes we're, again, back to not being open to have those conversations is we know there's just going to be this conversation, whether the parents have a different goal, the kid has a different goal, we have a different goal. Injuries are kind of coming up in the sport. It's just too hard on their body for the skills they want to do. We know that there's so many factors that we don't want to have that conversation. But when you take it in a private arena and you kind of say, okay, we're just doing what's best for you. We love you no matter what you do with your skills, and we care about you. We just want you to be happy and healthy. And we're going through this right now so actively with coronavirus. Some people have stopped, changed levels, changed programs, come less, come more. Like, so some people have really hard situations. And so we're just like, let us know how we can best help you. And when you have that as a foundation, when you get in the trenches and you have those conversations about on either side of like, okay, if you don't want to do all the conditioning and you don't want to do these skills that we have for you, these drills we have for you, and do the boring stuff, that's okay. That's your choice. But realize that you told me your goal was this skill, this level, whatever it is. And there's a gap there, and you're going to probably be upset down the road when those things don't come together. Or on the other side of the fence is someone who's, constantly trying to maybe dodge those bullets of not doing the work, but they have a goal that's completely in line with that level of commitment and work ethic and having 5 other sports and 14 other hobbies, that when they do miss a practice, if the goal is like, I just want to have fun, I just want to be here and enjoy it, then it's cool. And there's not a lot of tension there anymore. But as Eva hopefully will say, you have to build different pathways and programs to support all of those needs. And that's the problem that I see when I consult with gyms, is they have the team side and then they have the non-team side, and there's nothing in between. So you're either doing hardcore gymnastics competing or you are not. And there's 80% of the kids are somewhere in between those two extremes. And you have to build pathways and options for kids to do other things. And we've literally rebuilt from scratch this year new options for kids because of coronavirus, right? We won't go into it, but a perfect example, someone made the decision that school was more important. She wanted to go to a boarding school, and she was an amazingly talented athlete. We love her to death. She's like the heart and soul of like part of our team. And I miss her every day, but her decision was academics in different sports. And Eva made a custom program for just the holidays to come home and join back in for payments on the month. And that flexibility made her so much happier, because we were just like, whatever you want to do, we love you, but let's find an option where when you're home, you can still be a part of that program. 5 years ago, we would have never had that conversation. We would have been like stuck our foot in the sand and be like, no, you can't. You're here, you're gone. Just because we're kind of being too stubborn. So that's my long-winded answer, but I definitely want to hear, because Eva's the magician behind all of this stuff.
Well, thanks, Dave. And Katie, thank you so much for asking the question. It's such a great question, and it's truly a battle that we're all facing and have been for so long. I agree with Dave that it comes down to communication. But I think first, it's good to identify your core values and then come back to them when you have to have these tough conversations. So if one of your core values is for the kids to feel safe and happy and to have a place to do gymnastics, but also grow as humans, and that you're really focused on coaching the person, then it's a little bit easier to sit down with the gymnast and say, okay, you kind of notice out loud, I'm noticing that you're doing X, Y, and Z instead of all the drills. So that's a change. What has something changed for you? Have your goals changed? What are you looking to get out of gymnastics? What do you want from this? I think it comes down to, yes, communication, but the types of questions that you're asking are really important, because it will help you kind of get a better picture of where your gymnast is at, because it changes. Time. They come in, a couple of years prior. I want this, I want that. I have all these goals, college, all the things. And then you're creating plans and tracks for all of those goals. And then it's like 6 months later, what just happened? I just spent all this time creating these programs for you, and I can't get you out of the chalk bucket. So in those moments, before you get to that point of complete and total utter frustration, I think what you do is you just have a one-on-one with your gymnast and say, okay, have your goals changed? Because if they have, that's okay. I just need to know, so we're on the same page, so that I can help you get to where you want to be. Now, if it's more extreme, because I feel like your example when you asked the question was a little bit more extreme. Like there are some kids that maybe gymnastics is not the sport for them anymore. But when they've been so invested for so long and it's a piece of who they are, that they're going to hang on tight.
Yes.
Because the thought of saying, I quit is like not a thought. It's just, or it is a thought, but it's terrifying. And maybe not only terrifying to the gymnast, but terrifying to their parents or their mentors in life, or maybe they're worried about what you might think because you've been so invested in their gymnastics. And so I think ultimately it comes down to helping the gymnast feel okay about whatever decision they're going to make. Listen, I adore you, but if this isn't what you want anymore, that's okay. And they're like shocked to hear the coach say that. I can help you make this transition out of gymnastics if that's what you want. And you'll never be a stranger to this gym. You're still part of this family. You always will be. I mean, we're hiring. Do you want to coach? Like, I can train you. Like, maybe they're a better coach than gymnast. That's happened a lot in our gym, Dave. So maybe there are other ways for them to stay connected to the sport that they love without feeling tortured every day as a gymnast in a leotard. Maybe they just don't want to put a leotard on every day and come to practice. Mm-hmm. And so, but I think kind of separately, something that has helped me in the past is recognizing the emotions that I feel about the situation. So allow yourself to feel what you feel. And then you have to just kind of put it on a shelf for a minute and look at the problem or the situation from a different lens. So for instance, if you were an outsider looking in, how would you help this person, or what would your decision be and why? And so again, coming back to your core values or your mission statement, if ultimately you want your kids to be happy, regardless of the level, and regardless of their goals, is she happy right now? She doesn't look happy. Her behavior is telling us that she's not happy. So you might start there with the conversation with the gymnast and eventually bring the parents in. It just seems like you're not happy here anymore. And that makes me sad. Is there something else? Is there something going on? Or what do you love about this? And if they can't answer what they love about gymnastics anymore, then maybe it's time for something else. And that's okay. So I think what a lot of the gymnasts are looking for in a funny way is permission, so to speak, from the people around them that they're working so hard to to impress or not let down. And so I don't know if that's helpful, but I can tell you that I have been in your seat 1,000 times. I've had so many of these tough conversations, and I have sat in a room with a gymnast who has made up her mind, and the parent can't get there. And so then it becomes like, okay, now I know what she wants, but I have to turn my attention to the parent, help the parent transition out of gymnastics, because the parent has invested so much money and so much time, and we're driving over the place. And
which they're quick to remind you.
Always. Oh yeah, always. So
yeah, I'll weigh in here too, because something that Eva popped in my mind. Like, the biggest thing that kids often have a problem with, and I think that this is why it sparks this like really laborsome like process, is they have in that age group, especially with us, but especially in that age group, they have like a giant fear of judgment from other people, from social judgment. That is the hardest thing in the process. They have a huge amount of fear of judgment from their parents, of what they're going to say, of what their coach is going to say, of what their friends are going to say. And like, so there's a lot of factors here that if they can kind of, like Eva said, get that permission or get that air cover, that's a big part of it, of knowing, like, I'm not making this decision because I'm scared of what my friends are going to think about me when I quit, or I'm scared about what my parents are going to do because I put all this time with I don't want to let my parents, I don't want to let my coaches down. Right. And I know that was the girl that I'm talking about. she was very much had all those factors. What are my friends going to think? And all that stuff. But also the fear of the unknown is very big for them. Like, what am I going to do? These are my friends. This is my community. This is I spend 20 hours a week here. This is crazy. Like, I spend all my time here. How am I going to have my friends still? How am I going to still be happy? Like, what else can I do? And a lot of them know that this is not what they want to do, but they don't know what they would want to fill that time with and how they're still going to have community and they're still going to have their friends. And so I think another thing that we've done and some other athletes that have chosen to move on or do other sports is finding ways to fill in those unknowns for them with these conversations about like, hey, like, we still love you. If you don't want to do it, you can work here. You can pop in and say hello. Like, you can come to help to the meet. You can do whatever. If we have a movie night, you're still welcome to come. Like, I think that's a big part of it. But then also too is investigating with them. Like, okay, if this isn't working, what do you love doing? What else do you really like want to do with your time? And sometimes like, oh, well, I'd love to try track. Like, or I'd love to, because their school friends are all at track and they come from a different town. Like, we had a lot of different towns at our gym. And so like one person who's on the high school team. And so like they want to do high school gymnastics because all their friends are there from school or something else. So if you kind of probe out whether the interests they have or what things would make them happy, or you facilitate those connections with other people, I think they often are like, okay, like it doesn't seem as daunting that they don't want to do it anymore. You know what I mean? So I don't know, what do you think? Is that helpful? Do you have other clarification questions?
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, a lot of what you guys are saying are like, things that I think we've sort of like touched on, but maybe never. I mean, you guys know, like, kids are so weird. Like, I love them all. They are my family. But first of all, every kid is different. And then right in that same vein, every kid is sort of the same too. Like, they need these certain things. They're all looking for, acceptance. They're all looking for, like you had said, like the permission from somebody to do whatever it is they want to do. And, their peers can be like, these kids can go from their best friend in 1 second to, oh my God, you quit the team. How could you? I can't believe it. And oh, did you hear? She quit the team and blah, blah, blah. So like, they've seen it happen to other people. And now they're like, oh my God, like, is that going to happen to me? So a lot of what you're saying is like stuff that we've sort of gone through. But I think, you guys were so much more specific about it. Like, I think we were probably, or I myself was very like casual, like, hey, like, is everything all right? Like, are you okay? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. I believe you, I guess. But like, to truly sit down in a moment where it's not, everyone's not around. We're not in the midst of practice, on a separate time, even maybe like a separate day or something, to say like, let's actually sit and face to face and talk this through. And when there's no pressure of like anyone else or, we don't have much time in our gym. So I think that might be like, looking back on it now, like a big deal for the girls to have any kind of conversation in the gym, because everyone is always there. So
and when you build out that time with them, it's, it builds a respect level and a level of comfort, because they realize, oh, okay, she's scheduling time with me. Like, she must really care about my gymnastics. And they know you care about their gymnastics. It's not about that. But I think, if they're already feeling nervous about what the next steps are for them, the fact that they get a chance to talk with you one-on-one, separately, without the pressure of their teammates, like you just mentioned. I think there's so much value in that, and you'll really get more out of them than you would in a more casual kind of passing by conversation. And you might consider building out an option that serves both needs. I think that there's pros and cons to customizing programs for kids, because if you customize a program for each individual, then you're just running a circus. Let's be real. It would be really hard to stay on top of all of those details. I mean, you have to stick to the core foundations in your program. That's really important. I think what I'm saying is that you consider building out tracks that serve both needs, because times have changed, kids have changed, this world has changed, and what they need now is different than what they needed a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I would probably 5 years ago now, I had to come to this realization on my own that what I think these kids need is not what they need anymore. It may have worked a couple of years ago. The approach may have worked, having one direction to go in. And if you fit this mold, great, come on board. If you don't, go play soccer. Like, that doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. It's not, it used to be a thing, and it's not a thing, because these kids are getting so much more out of gymnastics than the gymnastics itself. So how can we build programs and options for them to stay in their sport, stay in their gym, so that we can continue to cultivate our community and keep kids in gymnastics? I think, it kind of, I don't love to give USA Gymnastics credit these days for anything, but I think one of the smart things they did back in the day was develop the Excel program, because that was a way to keep kids in gymnastics that maybe didn't want the JO track, didn't want to be in the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week, but still wanted to participate at any level and also have their extracurricular activities. So I think what we can do is use that concept as a model for what we're talking about here, and say, okay, maybe there are 2 different tracks that could possibly come with 2 different tuition structures, practice schedules, where you have a group that might be doing level 8, 9 gymnastics, but maybe they're not here 5 days a week, or maybe it's a reduced schedule. And it's less of a focus on building skills and getting to 10, and more of like, let's figure out how to maintain our skill level and have fun while we're doing it, and still get out there and be competitive, and wrap up our gymnastics career in a way that we can be excited about and feel proud of.
Yeah.
Then you have your other track, which are your kids that are like, I want 10, I want college. And maybe there are times where they practice together. Those, more advanced, I don't know what we would call it. Dave, we're still trying to figure out a name.
Performance plus.
There it is. Performance plus. Those guys are maybe, I'm losing my voice, sorry. Maybe they're in the gym a couple extra days a week, or maybe they're staying longer, and an extra skill focus hour in, where they can get some more numbers in, or maybe their strength program is a little bit different because they need more to be able to do more. And so you sit with your parents, or Zoom with your parents, whatever's happening these days, parent meetings, way easier. Way easier. I'm like, why have I not been doing this my whole life? And you explain to them the difference and help them understand what they're paying for in either track. And so this is something Dave and I have talked about a lot. And I think that the gyms that are able to pause and listen to the community and kind of observe what the new needs are and pivot those needs are the gyms that are the most successful and able to kind of evolve with the new age gymnast and gymnastics as a whole. So I don't know if it's possible in your space, in your gym, but maybe it's something to consider, and we'd be happy to help if you need any help. We have lots of resources.
Thank you. That's actually kind of a perfect segue into my next point. So, like slight background on our gym. It's tiny. It's super old. I mean, everyone in so I work at Shrewsbury Gymnastics in New Jersey, and our whole community knows who we are, and everyone, people come in and they're like, oh, I used to go here when I was a kid, and we know the owner, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's really kind of a staple, which is cool. And that's why I've been coaching for as long as I have. I think if I was at some sort of crazy high pressure gym, I would have never lasted. But, so that's how our gym is. So a big problem that we have, though, is space and time. So our gym kind of goes without a lot of things. We don't have a pit. We only have like 2 beams. Our bars are from, 1985. Like there's a lot of things kind of holding us back. So we had actually kind of spoken about like, hey, should we do a different track? Like a lot of our girls do high school gymnastics, and that's kind of the point of yoga. Yep. So they're really into doing high school stuff. They're very lucky that they get to kind of like take their sport and do it in high school with all their high school friends. It's really cool for them. And we like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So we kind of were like, hey, should we, make a program for those, exactly like you said, the 80% of kids who's neither, baby rec nor high level gymnast, who really want to be there. And maybe they like really love floor, or they only like doing bars, or, whatever. We would love to have done a different track for them. And we're kind of like still trying to figure it all out. And obviously COVID and, just kind of like threw a wrench and everything. But that being said, that's kind of like how we're dealing with those kids who maybe aren't as serious. And thank you. Like that was perfect, advice on all of that. So now on that note, how do you then deal with that one kid? And in our gym, that's really kind of what it boils down to. Probably that one singular kid who is like, I want to go to college. I want to do this. This is my dream. Our gym, historically, Joga has had kids that go on to do college gymnastics, usually D3. 2 of our girls actually went to Springfield and did some gymnastics there, which is pretty cool. We were really proud of them. That was a few years back. So, but we have a girl now in particular who's like, I want to be a D1 gymnast. Now, and I'm her coach. I want to help her. Like I want her to at least try, So how do you separate, okay, all these kids who are like, ha, this is so funny, and my boyfriend this, and blah, 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 and whatever. And then there's the girl who's like getting madder and madder that she can't take a turn on our like one set of bars because everyone else is like standing by the chalk bucket and kind of talking through their turn and taking forever, because she deserves her time too. She doesn't deserve all the time, but she definitely deserves some. So how do you then, cater to that gymnast?
Well, Eva, how about these apples? This is a
story.
We have a great dynamic in our gym. We've got a real little bit of everything.
we are the same thing.
Right there. Yeah. Great question. I think there are a couple different things you could do. You have some options. First, I think you should think about whether it's something you're capable of doing. Not because of your coaching. That's not where I'm going with this. You obviously, as a coach, can get her what she wants. That's not the question. The question is, can you get her to D1 college and run a gymnastics program?
Yeah.
So be honest with yourself about that. And is it possible? Because you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. You don't want to make promises you can't keep. And if the space and your time don't align with what she would need to get to that level, then you might consider having that, again, tough conversation with her and her family and say, hey, listen, this is not what we can provide here at this time. However, I've called around. I have some friends in the game. If you're willing to commute to this other gym, I think it would be a better fit for you because they're training 14 other kids that are trying to do the same thing you're doing, right, and refer out. That for you might be the most shattering, heartbreaking, tragic moment of your life, or a coaching career at least. So you're going to have to cry it out, and you're going to have to be okay with crying it out, but it might be what's best for her. That's one scenario or one option. Another option would be maybe it's possible to take a look at your entire schedule and say, okay, can I build in extra time for this gymnast on top of what we're already doing? And you could invite others to join if they want to get busy in the gym, you know, like these additional practice times or days, options are available to whoever you decide they're available to. But be crystal clear about what the expectations are. So I'm adding an extra 3 hours of practice a week. I'm making this up. It might be more, it might be less. During these extra 3 hours, these are the expectations. And set the stage for this gymnast to have that space to be more successful because she's able to take more turns. She's not getting caught up in the social pieces. Again, it doesn't mean you're taking the social pieces away from the team program or the practice schedule, because you're still allowing a certain level of it to happen in other practices, but you're building out additional practice times for extra work. Now, it has to make sense for you. You have to be able to do that without killing yourself working 70 hours a week, right? See, that's the key. That's the key. And is there something else that you can give up or delegate to somebody else so that you can take on this extra time? So it would be a replacement for you. It wouldn't be an addition. It's an addition for the gymnast or gymnasts if there's more than one person interested and take in more practice time. But make sure that it's not an addition for you, that you're looking at your whole scope of work and saying, okay, you know, I have kind of like an assistant coach that could probably manage X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to hand those things off to her. She knows how to do it. I'll train her up a little bit, oversee it a little bit, but she'll be okay. And that will open up some space for me to be able to take on this extra thing. And then you can go back to the parents and the kids, and the gymnasts, and say, I'm excited that she wants a college opportunity. I can absolutely get her there. Here's the plan. And then you start getting more specific with her plan, whether she wants to be an all-around gymnast or specialize in an event, and you can build out a plan. I don't know how old she is.
Old.
Okay, yeah. How much time does she have left?
So she's a junior. She's a junior, and I think part of the problem is because we do yoga, it's never really on their minds like, oh, I could go to college and do it. Plus, college gymnastics is so hard, you know, it's usually reserved for those level 10s, those elites, like those are the girls that go on. So you watch college gymnastics and you think as a yoga gymnast, oh my God, like I could never do that.
Trust
but
me,
the great thing,
YMCA gymnast, it's the exact same thing.
Yeah. And the great thing about yoga is you can really get out of it what you're willing to put into it. You know, if you have coaches who are invested and, you know, if you have the equipment, you have the space, you know, and you have that opportunity, I do think it's possible. But she is 16 and she did decide a little late. So, you know, it's a time crunch. And that's actually kind of like the second part of my question is like, do you guys think that scenario is a possibility? Now, obviously you don't know her. So I'm not saying like for her in general, but have you ever seen, you know, a case where a kid was like, came out of a program, like let's say Excel or IGC or Joga or YMCA or something like that, and actually went on, you know, to do D1 gymnastics, you know, like
I think anything's possible. I think anything's possible, Katie. It just depends on what the kid wants and how hard she's willing to work for it. And if the coaches have the time and the space to offer her the opportunity. So anything's possible. It doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter, you know, what you learned your basics. I mean, I think it could be anywhere. And I don't think she's too old. I think, what do you think, Dave? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have two things. One is that there's like three layers in my mind that I'm conceptualizing to like have in place. And then two is we actually have a really good story from the YMCA about this. So we have, like, you have to have at the global level of what Eva's talking about. Do I have the the programs in place, the people in place, the time, the space, the availability, the equipment, that whatever. That's like the first check of like, okay, you want to do this, I want to do this. Do we have the actual things we need to help you be there? And if you go past that, the next is like, what is the macro level training things do we have? Can we get you more time in the gym? Can we maybe outsource some of your strength and conditioning to another time so you have another hour on bars? Like there's a lot of little caveats there, and that comes down to like the tactical scheduling at a global level and stuff like that. But even on that note too, is one thing we had a struggle with is, do we have the culture within that macro level that is like, the kids that are not in that bucket of super high level are not going to be snippy and have a side eye to the one person who is chasing that super high level goal. And I'm not saying that maybe you don't have that situation.
Oh, we have it. Oh, we have it.
We had a big conversation and issue early on about like a lot of, like I said, like side comments and like, oh, well, this person, and like, it's so easy, realizing that like, no, just different goals and different commitment levels and work ethic towards those goals. If you don't have those goals, that's okay. If you do have those goals and you're not willing to put the work in, that's not okay. Right. And so that's like the conversation. We have some very serious one-on-one talks with people about like, hey, this person is chasing a high level goal and they're putting in the work to do that. You should be happy for them. You should try to encourage them. Don't be bitter. Don't be jealous. And if he doesn't look good on anybody, you know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of a side thing. If you want that, then let's do it. Let's get to it. If you want that, but you're not putting the work in, that's a different conversation. So like, there's like that middle layer that's important. And then the last thing is like the conversation of like, do I have the technical knowledge and the whereabouts to actually train these high level Division I skills? And I did not, right? And that's where like me and Nick started to link up, because I was really good at the strength conditioning, the medical stuff, the culture vibe. I was cool with that. But even I did not have the technical ability to teach some of the highest level skills that I think like Yurchenko fulls. One athlete for a while was trying to do Yurchenko full for a while. And I was like, I know I did a pretty good layout, but like when we started doing fulls, I was like, Nick, help me. And I was like,
Yeah.
and same thing, like shoot overs didn't come natural. She started to try to learn a pack. And I was like, I don't know if I really know exactly how to teach a pack really, really well. Yeah. And that's where I was like outsourcing to Nick and people like that. So there's 3 layers there, but on that common denominator was that we actually had an experience where there was a gymnast from a YMCA organization who was part of a gym that we maybe don't value-wise align with, but they had the technical whereabouts, they had the ability to, and she went to Nebraska on a scholarship. And I think she transferred to UCLA before coronavirus. I think that was like a thing that was happening. I don't know if that's still a problem, but like we literally watched this person from a dual JO and YMCA level come from the Y gym where nothing was possible and they'd never get out of it. And this girl was doing Yurchenko full. She was dominating double pikes on floor at Y National and stuff like that. And so it's totally possible. Again, it comes down to, do you have the systems in place from a cultural point of view to support that, right? And now we're finally at a place where I think it's much, much better. And then do I have the ability to tinker with the planning and the schedule and the equipment and the coaching? And then beyond that is like, am I honest with myself and self-aware of whether I can spot packs? Can I spot, can I teach a layout, step out on beam? Can I teach double pike safely and know how to not only teach those skills, but manage them in a program safely, get them in a floor routine, do them over the whole year? Do I know about recruiting? Do I understand the dynamics of that? Like me, I don't have the ability to do that at a super high level if I want to get a kid Division I scholarship. So if one of our girls says, I want to go elite and try to go to a top 10 school, we're probably going to have a conversation about some other gyms locally that are a better fit for them. If you want to get to level 10, we could definitely help you out with that. But once you go past that, like mid-level college of even Division 1 through 3, once you're like, no, I want to go to Alabama. Like, okay, wait a minute. Like, oh,
right.
This is not for us, right? And even personally, for me, I work 3 jobs. I don't have the time to put in 40 hours a week towards someone who wants that commitment. It's a full-time job to do that. So those are my kind of parting thoughts.
And I just want to add that we are okay with who we are and who we are not.
Yeah.
And we're not afraid to identify the difference and stand behind what we are able to do. And so I think that's really important too. Look at yourself, look at your program, and just decide what kind of a program you are and what kind of kids you're going to cultivate in your program, and stand behind it and feel good about it. And when someone comes along that you can't serve appropriately or to the best of your ability, right? That's okay. Refer them out, and that's okay. They will survive, and they will thank you down the road for passing them on to someone else who can serve that kind of a population. And this goes for the gamut. I mean, high level, low level, inclusion-based programming. You know, I mean, you think about all the different ways we can serve our communities, and it's important before you take the personal hit, like, oh, if I let her move on, does it mean I failed as a coach and I couldn't? No, that's not it. Because you're working within a system and you're working with a team of others that are helping you make this gymnastics thing successful. And because it's such a team effort, it doesn't even make sense for you to take the hit on your own, because like you just said, it would require more time in the gym. Maybe that's not possible. That's not your fault. Maybe it would require different equipment. And, you know, unless you have a spare $5,000 in your back pocket to just purchase the balance beam on your own, I don't, it's not on you. And so, you know, try to separate yourself emotionally from the notion that maybe this isn't going to work in our space, from the fact that you could definitely do it. You know, if you could wave your magic wand and say, poof, brand new gymnastics center with all the equipment we need, and multiple foam pits and all the time in the world, and I only work 40 hours a week, and she's the only gymnast here. Like, of course, she would be Alabama. She would be Alabama in 2 years for sure. So I think it helps to kind of separate yourself. And I wish I had learned this, you know, earlier on, because I took everything. So, you know, personally, I took all these hits pretty hard when I was younger, I guess you could say. So what else do you have for us, Katie?
Thank you, by the way. That was like, you know, exactly kind of where my mind was going. And I was getting like slight pushback from the gymnasts because we've done a lot of stuff together. You know, very much like I wasn't sure how to coach through or spot a certain skill. And then we like learned it together. And then, you know, that kind of went on a little bit. So now I think she seems to think like we could keep doing that. But, you know, at a certain point, it's like, I just can't figure it out anymore. You know, like I don't have that knowledge, and I can't, you know, I can't teach her a pack. I can't teach her a Yurchenko. Like I can't, you know, she's doing Sukes on vault because like that's what we do, you know, and she's doing front handspring fronts because that's what we do and that's what we feel capable of. And it's like, I kind of was already leading up to maybe if she went somewhere else, I mean, not maybe, but most definitely, you know, she would have such a better opportunity. But, you know, you're with them for so long. And especially like at this gym, these kids are starting out at age 5 and you're literally, you know, it's like the same coaches that are coaching team coached you at rec at age 5. So we've literally known each other for so long. So it's hard to break that up. So like what you guys said is just, you know, perfect and validating, and thank you.
Remember, just because you're not her gymnastics coach, she's still going to be an important person in your life. Like she's still going to look up to you and be inspired by you and love you for all that you did. You're just going to sidestep in your role instead of just being the person for her gymnastics career. There's still a lot of other ways they'll stay connected.
I hope so. That would be the best case scenario. Okay, so on a lighter note, we, because of COVID, are obviously, you know, things are changing all the time. New Jersey is like kind of up and down. We were doing really good for a while. Then like our area specifically started getting some more cases. So it really kind of seems like we need to change up our training again. And we're not really like safe in what we're doing. So unfortunately, our kids have to go down to 6 hours a week of training. So that's like a huge blow to them. They're super upset. I mean, we were never like training 20 hours or anything, but to go from 9 to 6 feels like a huge, you know, deal. And we're not quite sure how to fit everything in. So how much strength training, flexibility training do you think is appropriate for kids who are training gymnastics 6 hours a week? And do you think it's appropriate to spend the full 6 hours on gymnastics, you know, aside from a warm up, you know, and all that kind of stuff, the full 6 on gymnastics, and then say, you know, you have to come here for your training on this day off, or you have to do some training on your own. I mean, that always gets a little sketchy because who knows who will do it and who won't. But, you know, what do you think is like the best way to go about that?
Yeah, we definitely faced a very similar situation, especially in the summer. We were only at like 9 or 10 hours, and we were having a tough time kind of getting everyone safely back and kind of doing that. And so I always go on the rule of thumb that, and I'm not going to say this is like concrete, but like about 20 to 30% of your time should be physical preparation, should be flexibility, strength, basics, whatever it is, just to keep people safe. Now, that doesn't mean you have to carve out. I think it's unrealistic for you to get the kids to come for 6 hours and have an hour and a half of that be just strength and conditioning, right?
Yeah.
I think that's very unreasonable in terms of motivation and like actually practically doing it. So what we've done now, and we're back up a little bit more than we were in the summer, but I have had to really pivot quite a bit. We used to have, I believe in a lot more of a block of conditioning at the end of practice or in the beginning of practice to try to like get the most out of it. But I've had to pivot quite a bit about adding a little bit more core stuff and a little bit more flexibility, like in the warm up, and like having a specific 15-minute active flexibility block like here, or like adding some leg strength in on vault, because we're not vaulting to hard surfaces. So I'm okay with the legs being a little bit more tired. So we'll have 3 sub circuits. One is the vault table, one is drills, one is leg strength and plyos, right? So I'm sprinkling in more strength into their rotations. We do more bar conditioning and arm conditioning as a side circuit. On beam, we have a flexibility and a dance complex on the side instead of what we would normally do, which is like just skills for 45 minutes or so like that. So that would be my first recommendation, is to try to get like, what is the bare minimum that I need to be safe and healthy? And for me, that is many components of Nick's daily dozen, which he has, which is like, some sort of like cast handstands, some shaping stuff, shoulder opening, closing, some hollow work, some handstand work, like basics of those things are sprinkled in. And then for me on the strength conditioning side, I know from like the general preparation, they should squat at some point. They should do some sort of lunging at some point. They should do some sort of push up and reverse push up at some point. So like between our shorter blocks of strength that we have, and then also in the actual workouts, we're adding more. But I do think that you should try to investigate some sort of Zoom session with them. And we had a situation where one of our coaches could not be at practice because of her other job, and she was really bummed. But then also we knew they needed more. So we did add in 2 45-minute Zoom sessions over the break. And I would either write programs and give them to them and they did them, or they could do them on their own beforehand and join after. So I know it's hard in terms of like getting someone to actually do that. But again, this is full circle. It goes back to the goals, right? If you want to be safe and healthy and enjoy the 6 hours that you have in practice, the fastest way to not have that is to have a sore back or to have a sore wrist. We want to kind of encourage the positive performance side of why we're doing this extra Zoom session at home as a team workout, or why we're having you do a little bit of flexibility at home, because we want the event time to be the fun stuff when you're here. So I guess like those are kind of the things, is more in the warm up, more sprinkled in throughout the practice. If you can get in a couple of Zoom sessions, you could probably get your 9 hours in with maybe 5 of it being the actual training, because you're doing a little warm up, a little bit cool down, whatever it is, cleaning, right? All that kind of stuff. So you could probably get 5 hours of event time and do a good job with half hour, 45-minute rotations, and then sprinkle the strength in elsewhere.
Gotcha.
Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's like perfect. We never, we only just really started like having a true strength program for the girls maybe like 2 years ago, when my coworker kind of started. They would always condition sort of, but it was very old school, and it was something you would have seen in like 1991 or which it was fine. We weren't really doing anything crazy. The girls were basically healthy, but just now that our girls are doing more things and they're getting bigger skills for us, they're really pushing it. It was obvious that they needed like a true strength program, so we kind of started bringing it in. And again, that's so helpful. That's like perfect, because I was really nervous about that aspect. I mean, I'm not really that nervous about their gymnastics.
Yes, that's you hit the nail on that. I used to be nervous about their safety. I'd get so worried about doing a heavy leg circuit or an arm circuit and think, okay, let's go do bars. Let's see how that goes. You know what I mean? Like, that's super dangerous. Most of the stuff we're doing right now is not super high level hard math or high reps and high volume, just because we need to go slow. And so I'm more okay with like some jiggly legs when we're doing some vault drills. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is the 6-hour practice limitation a statement?
No. We had 1 or 2 of like close call, like third party kind of things happen. And our whole entire team practices together, and that's 30 girls. So it was already for our gym, so many girls, and it was already kind of like, okay, this is going to be a tough year. You know, everyone really needs to like stay on their event and like be where they are and not kind of float around. And then when those two things happened, you know, it was kind of just obvious that there was way too many of us in the gym at one time. And if we did have to close, or, you know, if someone did contract it, well, then you're out 30 kids when it could have been 15, whoever was in the one group. So we kind of just decided for our own personal safety reasons that like 30 girls was way too many in the gym at the same time. You know, we all wear masks, we all follow the rules. We're, you know, I have to say like our girls are really good about that kind of stuff, but just the sheer amount of kids that were in there, and they're all best friends. So like, of course they're like talking and they're hanging out, you know, like, so anything to kind of minimize, you know, was helpful. And unfortunately,
makes sense.
we don't have the time or staff to have another day for like both groups.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
really tough day.
It's tough. These are tough times. It's so hard to navigate, but
yeah,
hopefully it'll get better soon.
Could you run a staggered start on the same day with different groups like that? Like, with the same staff is there for 5 hours getting paid, but like 2.5 for one group, then you clean, then another 2 hours for the next 15 kids, or is that not possible?
No, right now that's not possible. So we have like our preteen kids that come in beforehand.
Sure.
So they kind of have like their block of time, and we already sort of like crossroads a little bit with them, you know, between their ending and our beginning. Yeah. So, and I actually thought with all this stuff that kids would be like out of school early. I was like, oh my God, we could have practice at 1 o'clock. Like this is gonna be great. And it just didn't happen at all. So, you know, everyone's kind of on their same school schedule still. Nothing really changed. Even if they are virtual, they're still like doing school stuff until 2:45, 3 o'clock. Yep. So yeah, it kind of just is what it is. Like like you said, I hope it kind of just the year goes by and, you know, everything kind of gets better. We're still supposed to have competitions. We're still supposed to have meets. Like they're still, you know, running everything. So I just don't want the girls to be upset with like the whole 6-hour practicing and then being like, I'm never going to win at a meet. You know, like that's what they care about, which is, you know.
You took the words out of my mouth that you really have to have a conversation about the changing in expectations and the changing in realistic goals, given this ridiculousness that we're living through right now. Like, I think we had to have that conversation early. Like the first thing that Eva said, she was like, listen, no move ups. We're not talking about level until like a long time now, you know? And so like, that was their first concern. And like, am I going to move up? Am I going to miss my skills? Blah, blah, blah. And so we had to like almost for them do that about like, listen, everybody calm down. We're just going to get healthy and safe first. We'll cross the bridge in the summer. Then we'll get our skills back and do all the things that we're doing. And then maybe at the end of this block, when December comes, we'll talk about maybe some meets. We'll talk about what we're doing. And I think that having that expectation of like taking that off their back, so to speak, of like they're not going to have to worry about move ups and meets. And even if they do compete, like doing new skills and winning and stuff like that, it's like, guys, just take this year on the chin like a champ. You know, we're in this together.
Totally. My favorite thing to do these days is walk around the gym and just say things like, I am so happy that we are able to be here doing gymnastics today. Like, I'm just trying to throw the gratitude out, you know, in all directions. Like, here, you guys are here in leotards doing gymnastics because we were shut down for quite some time, and it, like, a cold, dark gymnastics center is not okay, not a good thing. And so it really was a gut check. Like, whoa, God, I'm just, so every day when the kids walk in, I'm like, they're here.
Yeah.
The perspective of
gymnastics again. And so
of like, oh, we almost didn't get gymnastics back.
Yeah.
We had that for real.
So,
and like, I looked at the list of how the gyms went out of business and I was like, thank goodness we have an amazing, like, you know, C-level staff and stuff like that. Like, we almost didn't have a gym anymore.
Yes, us too. We were going through the same thing. So, you know, we're really grateful to be open. And honestly, you know, when we kind of like threw it out there to the girls, we did the same thing. Like, you're not moving up, don't ask, don't worry about it. Just like stop thinking about it altogether. You know, it really kind of hit home that like it should have been like that so many years in a row. Like, there should have been like so much less emphasis on all of that. But the girls are so used to that. Like, it's a new year and it's summertime and now I'm going to be getting like a double back this year and whatever. And you're like, whoa, like, just because you're a year older and a season has passed does not mean you're suddenly, automatically just like bound for these brand new skills, and hopefully, it's like slowing them down a little bit. But, I love that they're still enthusiastic and they still want to get new things and they still want to excel. That's like a great, personality trait for all of them. But it was nice to kind of just be able to say, like, everyone chill.
Yeah.
We're not doing anything crazy.
Yep. We've made it all about the process orientation, the gratitude, the perspective, but the process of gymnastics and what we gain out of gymnastics. And like, yes, new skills are fun. We'll get back to it. And we're on our way now. Honestly, some of the kids are coming back pretty well after the summer.
Yeah.
So, like, let's just recalibrate our focus on like, we love being here. We're grateful to be here. I mean, we all come to the gym for the best part of it, which is being around each other and being happy and like enjoying the time, especially after being in my apartment by myself for 3 months. I'm happy to see everybody.
Yes, we did the same thing. We had like an outdoor workout with everybody, and the first time seeing them after those 3 months was just like, we could do this forever. This is fine. Like, if this is all we have to do, like, this is great.
Yeah, we had quite a few teary eyes the first like circle we sat back up together.
Yeah, us too. Okay, so I really only have one more question, sure. And I've asked so many people the same question, so I'm dying to know your take on it. Is there a way to truly and safely get more flexible? And I mean, I think obviously the answer to that is yes, but is there a point, do you think, that a certain kid is just like not going to get more flexible? Like, do you think that there are kids that it's like, this is not happening no matter what we do, no matter how many stretch privates you take, no matter what, it's just not happening?
So the hard, uncomfortable answer is yes. There are kids that are born with uniquely shaped anatomy from their bones point of view, where they are going to be unable to do the things that gymnastics requires. Okay. And the most common, the most important example I have of this is I treated a level 9 trying to go level 10, and she had an amazing right and left split, but she literally just could not do a straddle split. It was like hitting a brick wall. Mm-hmm. And she went to 2 other providers. She was considering hip surgery. She had a lot of stuff going on, and they were like going to repair all this stuff. And I don't know why that she hadn't had this before, but maybe just because I have a gymnastics eye and I was giving her assessments that weren't specific. But when there's tests that you can do to say, do you have bones that are shaped different than other people? Like if kids sit in a W as a kid, or if they just grow naturally more pigeon-toed. If you do those assessments and that person has a hip that is just not designed for turnout and like being able to do a straddle, you're going to clearly find that, right? And x-rays do that, but then also assessments can do that. And so when I came to her, the long, belabored, hour-long evaluation was stop doing straddle splits. That was her solution, was don't do straddle splits. Let's maybe learn a toe on now the stalder. Let's try to swing away from a switch side on beam into a switch leap or a switch ring or some other advanced turning jump. And her mom was like, what? We could just do all those things. I was like, there's a big book over there with a lot of different numbers in it for things you could do. And there's a lot of tests that you can do as a medical provider to pick, is this a bone problem? Is this a muscle tightness problem? Or is this just someone who's just like picked the wrong parent and is just more stiff jointed, right? Even if they are someone who has that like stiffness kind of point of view naturally, we know from research that if you stretch every day consistently, doing things that are based on true science, and I hate to break everyone's heart in gymnastics, but half the things we're doing in gymnastics still are not based on proper assessments, and they're not based on proper evidence-based protocols. They're based on what we've always done for the rest of our lives. And, people are like, yeah, but rhythmic does this. Rhythmic doesn't do double fulls on floor with forces that are 15 times their body weight, right? And like, oh, but dancers land like this. Dancers don't do double backs. They don't have knees that are 12 years old doing double backs. And so when you look at the scientific principles behind that and you really drill down to, okay, why are we still doing this? Why are we still pulling on kids' shoulders? Why are we still pushing on oversplits? Because no one's given them alternative options. And it goes back to our first conversation, is no one's done that work to translate the medical world into the practical. What do I do in 15 minutes when I have 25 kids that are pushing each other and don't want to listen to me, right? And that's where I think some of the work that we've done has been helpful. But there's a limiting factor of bones, but beyond that, you can make significant changes in the muscles themselves, which is what needs to happen, but is what often is not being done. So like regular foam rolling, regular stretching that's properly done, like tucking your hips under in a quad stretch and not bending into your back, doing some proper eccentric training. And this is where strength conditioning comes into it. People think that strength conditioning is going to tighten the kids up, but actually evidence supports that it actually is one of the main ways to keep you more mobile if you do it properly. And you hire a strength coach who knows about science and knows about research and knows about all these kind of things, not just the social media guru that you found for some sort of like, awesome home workout. And so it's a longer answer. You can make changes. The best way to do it is off an assessment with a medical provider in a proper strength program that's based on evidence. But then also there will be a rate limiting factor. Some kids, you can't be Ali Raisman and Nastia Lukin. It just doesn't happen. You can't be super, super powerful and super, super mobile, right? And I think that's the problem that comes up is as coaches, we sometimes ask too much of the kids from a physical point of view. I want you to be super strong, but I also want you to be super flexible. I want you to be able to like go for a 4-hour practice, but also a 30-second turn. I want you to be able to be, super, super good front tumbler and a super, super good back tumbler. And it's like, you can't ask all of those things. I honestly don't think you need 3 full oversplits to be successful as a high level gymnast. I really don't. Look at Michaela Skinner. She's incredibly strong and incredibly powerful. Same thing with Ali Raisman. Same thing with Simone. Like they've developed mobility, but they're super hyper mobile. So you got to find the different avenues of what's good for the kids. So like, yes, maximize it to a point and try to do it every day, consistently 6 days a week. And if you still are hitting progress gains, look at the book for different skills or find some more powerful based skills or try to be creative about what you can do to work around those limitations. But I've yet to find somebody who gets a good assessment, has a good program every single day and is dedicated to it, and also is having a coaching relationship where they're open to new ideas around their skills that hasn't been able to find a way to do it. That girl who was a level 9 went on to be just fine, and she was on the borderline of surgery.
Wow. That's crazy. Actually, the girl in question here is also the one who wants to be a D1 gymnast. So there's like a lot of stress, surrounding her lack of flexibility. And we have a lot of kids that aren't flexible. So, what is your take on at our gym, because we're so small and because, when we see kids with potential, it's usually their strength factor. We see a 6-year-old who's like banging out pull-ups and, has this like crazy powerful round off. And we're like, oh my God, you should be on the team. And then she sits in a split for the first time and she's like in a lunge. So, that's kind of like the theme of our gym. It's, a bit of a joke. So we have a lot of kids who are just like never, ever, ever getting more flexible. And, what's your take on what, as a person who went to gymnastics when they were younger and, the old school thing, right, is stretch every day, go home and sit in front of your TV and do your splits in front of your TV. Like, is that still relevant? Is that still just like, hey, sit in your splits for 90 seconds and, move on with your day and make sure you do your monster kicks and all of your like active flexibility stuff. And, do you think 15 minutes is like enough amount of time to be doing a flexibility circuit where the kids will actually see progress?
So the research is definitely pretty clear that consistency is more important than intensity, which is the opposite of what gymnastics has done for the last, whatever years. Like they've definitely stretched every day, but to maximal hardcore intentions, right? So if you, the key here is when you look at what's traditionally done with gymnastics and just static stretching for a long amount of time, for like long 90 seconds, you have to understand, and maybe it's not for coaches to understand, but the medical providers have to understand why stretching works. Like that's the big X factor here, is like the reason you get more flexible when you look at studies is not because your muscles get longer when you stretch. So it's not like you're stretching your hamstrings out in splits and your muscles are physically getting longer. You're just getting used to the discomfort of stretching and you're changing your body's ability to comfortably like stay there. So you see studies where people stretch their hamstrings every day in this crazy machine. I don't know who volunteers for these studies, but they gain a lot of flexibility passively, but there's no change in the length of the muscle. So what that means is that the nerves themselves are like, oh, this is terrible. And a week later, like, oh, it's not as bad. And 2 weeks later, like, oh, it's not that bad. And you get used to that discomfort of stretching. So from that point of view, foam rolling, stretching, hands-on work is not a permanent solution to keeping your flexibility. And that's where we go off the rails in gymnastics, is it's not based on the muscles being targeted. And it's not based on the fact knowing that the length is coming from just a relaxation and kind of getting used to that discomfort called stretch tolerance. So that's like one half of the equation. Is like, yes, you can 2 sets of 30 seconds on the same muscle group every day for 6 days of static stretching was most effective to increase range of motion, right? It was very close to like other things like PNF and whatever else is big literature review did it. So we know that consistent stretching works. However, consistent stretching only helps to give you passive flexibility. It doesn't change anything. So that's where you have to kind of be open-minded to, can I use some sliders to do eccentrics, or use some chin-up lowers, or do those things in a circuit, which is what we do now. It's like a little bit of soft tissue work in the beginning. Let's do our correct stretching. Let's go do some slow slider lowouts or some chin-up lowers. Then let's go immediately use that. Put your hands on your hips and do 10 jumps on tumble track to get your active flexibility up, and then go over some cast handstand stuff. So there's a circuit-based approach that's probably more effective. But back to your question, I don't think that 15 minutes a day is going to help you permanently gain increases in motion, right? People forget that warm-ups are used to prep the available flexibility you have. They're not the time to gain more flexibility. So you need a separate block of flexibility either at the end of practice or at home or something of that nature to consistently get up to that tolerance you need. And it's just like anything else. The kids that are very, very hypermobile, they couldn't do a pull-up to save their life. So they have to spend more time on some of that, boring kind of grunt work. The kids that are very, very stiff, they could do 100 pull-ups, no problem, but they're not going to be able to do their splits, and they're going to kind of lose their splits a little bit quicker. So it's about really teaching how the practice of flexibility carries over to the skills that they want to do and the things they want to accomplish. And then building a combination of a proper evidence-based warm-up and effectiveness, but then also, hey, by the way, here's a couple things you could do at home, or maybe we should add a side station in on beam or something of that nature.
That actually makes me think of one more question, and then thank you guys so much. This has been so amazing. What is your top items for a gymnast to have in their arsenal at home to keep up with all of this stuff? I mean, obviously COVID threw us all for a loop, and we were like, oh God, now you have to train at home and you have no weights, or you have your mom's 2-pound dumbbells. What, foam roller, weights, what do you suggest that they have?
So you mean actual tools, the things they can
Actual tools, yes.
Yep. So definitely some sort of soft tissue device like a foam roller, a lacrosse ball, a stick, whatever. Do not spend a lot of money on the fanciest, crazy thing. The research is clear. It does not need to hurt to work. Having ones with spikes is not better than ones without spikes. Lighting it on fire does not make you more flexible, faster, right? The crazy things the fitness industry tells you to do. So some sort of foam roller, lacrosse ball is easy to do. I think that ideally it would be to have a lighter set of dumbbells up to 10 pounds. Not everyone has that though, because some of the stuff you need requires that, but very easily you can just get resistance bands that are different levels, and they make some pretty hard ones, and you can adopt those to pretty much every exercise you need to do some way, shape, or form. So whether it's the smaller loop around your knees, that'd be good to have a couple of those, or the very long ones you can tie around a door and do some stuff for your shoulders is good. But beyond that, the rest of the stuff that, there's a couple layers here. If you're talking about just basic soft tissue maintenance care, you're kind of good right there. If you're looking at more of a performance program, which is what we make a lot of those programs for the athletes that come to the facility I work at, like the college athletes, the higher level athletes, they want strength conditioning outside of just their gymnastic stuff. Right. Then you have to investigate, how can we load you a little bit? And so maybe it's a backpack with books, or it's some sort of one heavier weight they can use, a kettlebell or something of that nature. You don't need it, but it's really good if you're trying to get the performance edge. And then the rest of the stuff is mostly just body weight stuff, body weight core stuff thrown in, just put socks on your feet on hardwood floor and do your sliders at home and do your active flexibility in your bands. The majority of things to really maintain your performance is very low budget. For under $100, you can get everything you possibly need. But if you're more of the above and beyond kind of thing, then you kind of get more into the conversations about, can I get a couple dumbbells? Can I get a kettlebell? Can I get I think a wellness journal is probably more effective than anything else. Tracking your sleep and how you feel and journaling is probably more important than, the fanciest roller.
Right.
Yeah, I was just going to say good food, sleep, lots of water. Those might be the 3 tools I would add. And the kids and parents don't always consider them to be tools. They're always looking for this fancy spiky foam roller that lights on fire, but they really don't need any of those things.
No, how dare you say that? Everything you guys are saying is so informative, and it keeps making me think of more and more questions. I could literally do this all day. Can I ask you one more thing? Do you mind?
Sure, absolutely.
How old are the kids that you coach?
Me personally, or just our program?
Your program in general. Is it all ages?
Yeah, we have
So
3 to 18.
So do you have a really big issue with your team kids and like their homework load and their like ability to, like you said, like get enough sleep, eat properly, get their homework done and still feel like they can practice? Like, is that an issue everywhere?
Yes.
Yes.
So we, I'll go first, and Eva can definitely share more. We firmly believe we're all in the gym because we want to make good humans. That is like our goal in life. We want good humans who go on to do amazing things. I've said this in the podcast. I firmly believe somewhere in the world of gymnastics, there's some kid who's going to interact with one coach that's going to change their life, and they're going to learn discipline and work ethic and community and teamwork, and they're going to go on and they're going to cure cancer. Like, I really believe that. Like, that's just the people that gymnastics breeds. So that's what happens in my mind whenever I work with people, is teaching those kind of things. So we believe holistically that we're trying to build good humans for the world. And part of that comes down to teaching the values and the concepts around not even scheduling. It's not even about scheduling. It's about like relationships with social media and judgment and other people and your friends and how you feel about yourself and your values and what society says you should do or what you're supposed to do versus what you actually want to do and what makes you happy. So we really believe that that's like one of our most important roles as role models and coaches for them. And there's 2 pieces to this. One is the positive role modeling, and 2 is the tactical education, right? So on the role modeling side, there was a time when I was not taking care of myself and the other coaches maybe weren't like representing those values of health and sleep and not working on too much and scheduling your time and all that kind of stuff. And we had to kind of, take our foot out of our mouth when we were saying, go do rope climbs, but sitting on a block and yelling at them. You know what I mean? So like we had to change our role modeling to take better care of ourselves. But then we started to realize how important better humans are better athletes. There's no doubt, right? So we had to start realizing that like those soft skills are more important. So we used to have whiteboard lessons. We used to have once a week for 30 minutes. We would carve out time. We're like, let's talk about empathy. Let's talk about what it means to be a good teammate. Let's talk about how is somebody managing their schedule. Let's talk about social comparison. Let's take a detox from social media for a month altogether and talk about how that feels. We still do that every year. And the reason we do that is because we know that if we teach the things that we've gone through with fears and insecurities and social judgment, if they see us being a little vulnerable and emotionally kind of with their level, and we teach them skills to navigate those things, it directly transfers over to their gymnastics performance. About why, back to our first conversation, why that one girl wants to go D1 and she's able to block out the noise of all the people around here and tunnel vision on her goal. And her friends support her because they believe in empathy. They believe in respect. Those are our core values. They believe in our family rules our family guidelines we have hanging up on the wall are like, ego is the enemy. Support your teammates. Like, be a good human, right? All that kind of stuff takes precedent over gymnastics. And so we found that it forces us to be better, and it forces them to kind of be self-aware of what they want and what's important to them. Yep. Eva, you have anything on that?
I agree 100%. I think that it's tough. It's tough, especially having so many different kids in the gyms at so many different levels and ages and stages in life. And so you work with one group and you're trying to get them to just focus on one thing at a time. And they're like, squirrel, squirrel. Then you're at the next group and they're, just tragic about the boyfriend and all the things. And it's a lot to manage. I understand more than you know where you're coming from. Trying to manage it all is really tough. And sometimes they literally need help building out a schedule. I mean, I have, and I can send you one of the templates actually. I built a template years ago because the gymnast was like, I feel like I don't even have time to eat a snack throughout the day because she was starving all the time in practice. Can I go get a snack? Can I go get a snack? I'm like, do you just not want to do bars? I'm trying to figure this out. And then finally she was like, I just feel like I don't have time to eat all day. I don't even have time for a snack. I'm like, okay, you definitely have time for a snack. I'm just going to help you find the time for the snack. Maybe we need to just schedule it in. And I literally blocked her schedule out. We added wake up time, breakfast, snack again, lunch. I'm in school during these times. I have this amount of transition time from point A to point B. So the snack during this transition time while I'm in the car driving should be something quick that I can grab and go with. this is when I can eat a full bowl of pasta and actually cook it myself. Just like helping them. Gymnasts are so visual. Sometimes giving them that visual really helps them manage their time. Another thing we've done in the past is we've allowed gymnasts to get homework done during practices. Now, this is really for those extreme cases where the parents are calling going, I'm pulling her out because she's failing whatever class. Right. School has to take precedent over sports. And so you don't argue with parents. Don't never argue that point, because you'll never win. And they need to do well in school. So what I've done in the past is compromise with the parent to say, okay, floor is her strongest event. She averages a 9.4 every time she competes. So how about for the next few weeks during our floor blocks, she sits in my office and gets her math homework done. So you clear it with the parents, because they're obviously paying a tuition and make sure they're part of the plan. But I've definitely seen that help, because the kids are constantly torn. I want to go to practice. I need to go to practice. I want to keep up with my training, but I get home and I'm exhausted. And I have nothing left to give my algebra homework. I have nothing left. So it's a very real problem. And sometimes it comes down to poor time management. And sometimes it's just that their plates are so full. And if we can help them find another little pocket of time where they can get some good focused work done without feeling like they're missing out on the whole practice, then do that. So it's like, okay, floor's over, like get your grips on, join us for bars, but at least they got a good 45 minutes to an hour of their homework done. And so there could be little things. Again, only do it if it makes sense for you and if it makes sense for the schedule. I always say that what we do for one, we have to be able to do for all. So, if you grant that accommodation for one gymnast, could you do it for 25 others? Do you have the space to do it for 25 others? Not that they would all come knocking at your door with the same request, but just trying to think globally first. Like, is this something I can offer everyone? We've had kids laying under the balance beam doing homework before. You find a space, you find a way to do it. But like Dave said, it comes down to having them really take a cold, hard look at what they're prioritizing in their lives. And it's interesting to see what happens when they take a break from social media. I'm so bored, I have all this time. Oh, so that homework is not an issue anymore, is it? Right? So really what you're spending your time doing is scrolling through Instagram, and it's taking up more time than you thought, but it's a good kind of way to help them be a little bit more self-aware about how they're spending their time. And coaches too. I mean, here I am acting like this is all gymnasts, like wonderful for the coaches, myself included. Like I should probably put my phone down and get some work done and stop complaining that there's not enough time in the day, because there is enough time. You just have to schedule it. You have to build it out. So,
and on that too, I find that gymnasts with especially the type A personality, that's how I was and how I see a lot of our gymnasts are, is that they never actually consciously plan time for them to relax and chill, like build in their schedule. So they always feel like that they're just like kind of like getting 5-10 minutes here. So if you say like 2 hours on Friday from 6 to 8 or 7 to 9 is like, turn your phone off, watch a movie, have fun, go with your friends, or like Sunday's your day, like Saturday's your day. Like Saturday's your day after practice, nothing, right? They're much more disciplined during the week typically to get that hour before practice done. And those add up a lot, knowing I got a big thing on Saturday with my friends. I want to be done. I don't want to stress out about it. Or Sunday I'm going out to do something. And so non-COVID teams. But yeah, that when they actually get, again, permission, like plan time for yourself to not think about gymnastics and not think about the world. Just enjoy what you're doing. They're much more chill about the week. They're like, okay, I got to get this.
And they're not teaching time management in school.
I know.
Like these kids aren't getting that kind of education. So for our student athletes who have so much to manage, it's like they don't just know. They don't just know how to juggle it all. And so I think it's really become the coach's job in a lot of ways, to step in and help these guys figure out how to manage their time. And for some, it comes naturally. And for others, it's really a struggle. And they might need a spreadsheet to make it all make sense. So I hope that helps. And I'm happy to share my templates with you if they would be helpful.
Yes, that would be so helpful. That would be beyond helpful. Thank you.
Cool. Well, anything else we can help you with? Or does that kind of cover it?
I think that's pretty much everything. Like I said, I'm sure I could talk all day, but I'm happy to be part of your community now, and your doors are so open to all of our questions and everything. So I'm sure there'll be a time where I ask.
For sure. Yeah. It's cool. I mean, we built that Space HQ for this exact reason. So people have questions, they need help, and we're lucky to have a network of people that can help with these things. So yeah, message me there or email Eva and I. And then if anything comes up, don't be afraid to be like, oh, I don't want to ask more questions. Like we're open books.
Awesome. Thank you guys both so much. This was amazing.
No problem.
You're welcome. Great to meet you, Katie.
You too. Thanks.
Take care.